Cam Ward struggled on the final day of Tennessee Titans mandatory minicamp, and it's something that we need to pay attention to going forward. That and more on today's edition of Locked On Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans. Today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. On today's show, we're going to break down everything you need to know from the final day of Tennessee Titans mandatory minicamp. Again, Cam Ward struggled on the day. We'll talk about the specific struggles and why it's something we do need to watch going forward. We'll talk about an unsung hero on defense who continues to make plays and be a leader. And finally, we'll talk about Brian Callahan's comments on his offseason plan, his revamped offseason plan that he's talked so much about. We'll dive into that. Before we do it, though, I do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. If you aren't an everydayer, you need to be one. It may be a break time for the Tennessee Titans, but there is no break for Locked On Titans. I'm going to have winners and losers of mandatory minicamp to start next week. I'm going to have what the Titans are going to do now and what the plan is going forward. We're going to have a divisional review and kind of where do the Titans rank within the AFC South. A big week on that coming, so a lot of content coming your way. But with that being said, Cam Ward throws 2 interceptions on the final day of mandatory minicamp. And the way that the interceptions happened are things that I think we do need to pay attention to, and I don't want to say worry about, but they are areas of improvement for Cam Ward that we need to pay attention to. So the first interception that Cam Ward threw, it was 7-on-7. He was rolling to the right, trying to throw back to the left, and throws it into the middle of the defense, and Cody Barton picks it off. Like, bad throw. I saw, obviously, anybody who knows the local market, Paul Kaharski was saying it was a terrible throw, bad decision. I saw a lot of people report that they thought that it was a bad throw and a bad decision, and rolling to your right, throwing back to your left, refusing to give up on the play, trying to make something crazy happen. Like, hey, you watch Cam Ward on tape and, he does do that type of stuff. That is something that happens. And then later on in a team period, he threw an interception to Davion Ross. Just inaccurate throw is what the reports indicate. Nothing crazy, rolling out right, just made a bad throw. And Cam Ward talked about the interceptions himself as well, and we'll get to that quote in a second, but there was a fumble lost, another fumble, and picked up by Draymond Jones. So you couldn't say that it was a good practice for Cam Ward as the Tennessee Titans focused on red zone opportunities, red zone, goal line, 7-on-7, and then team, all in those situations. And what I think, I guess, is where I come in here. Whenever I bring any sort of, hey, maybe we should stop and think about that, people always go crazy because any little hint of pessimism and people just freak out like, no, he's our savior, he's the king. Let's have an honest, logical discussion here. You watch Cam Ward's tape in college, there's risky behavior, there's a never say die attitude that can lead him into turnovers and bad decisions. He needs to calibrate what he can do at the NFL level compared to what he can do in college. And if we're honest, he had trouble with that in college, calibrating exactly what he could and couldn't do. I wouldn't say that he ever truly found a perfect line on that. He had a lot of turnover-worthy plays in certain situations. It wasn't out of hand there at the end, but, you add in the fumbles and stuff, and that is something that coming out of college, you would say, hey, that needs to improve. Cam Ward was not a perfect prospect. Like, I know that he's on the team now, and we're very excited, and I am excited. Like, I can't wait to watch Cam Ward. I think he's going to be good. But it's not like all the things that we talked about on his scouting report before he got drafted are just gone now. These reckless plays, again, never letting the play die. Also, some throws behind his receiver, like that happened as well. And we've heard some reports out of camp. Some of these throws that he's missing, he's behind on these. Jim Wyatt reported that on day 2. I believe that there were some behind throws. I think even Teron Davenport said that as well, that he's seen some throws behind. Like, that is something that we've had to take into account. So, of course, he's going to be improving on those things. But my point overall is we shouldn't just wash this away. We shouldn't just be like, oh, it's mandatory minicamp, no big deal, whatever. Like, these are the areas that Cam Ward needed to improve to become the best version of himself. He needed to play more on time. He needed to tone down the poor decision-making and learn when to let the play go. Like, go watch my film video. I've done 2 hours of Cam Ward film content on the Tic Tac Titans channel, and I did an entire video on what he needs to improve on, 30 minutes, and in that week, these were 2 of the major things. Playing more on time so that you're not behind on some of these throws over the middle that will get picked, and then calming down and not making all these crazy decisions. Now, Cam Ward had an excellent quote. Cam Ward will add the context, and Cam Ward will be his defense here against me, per se, in the court of Locked On Titans. Hello, jury. But Cam Ward said this about the interceptions. He said, quote, first one, 7 on 7. I don't count that. It's not real football. Glad I threw it to Cody for 6 points for my team with the little field day teams they're playing. The way he said that, so hilarious. He's got such a sense of humor. It's hilarious. He said, the second one, I should have sidearmed it. I don't know why I did some generic stuff. Really just getting better off the film. Got to continue to move backwards with my eyes. Talking about going through his progressions. Really just playing clean football, especially in the red zone. I got to take care of the ball. I'm aware of that. But I'd rather do all the crazy stuff so in a game, I know what I can get away with. And again, that is the point that I made last week when Cam Ward had a little bit of a struggle. I'm going to make this point again. I'm going to make this point in training camp. Now, there will come a time where I'll kind of go off that point and get to, hey, he should be improving in some of these areas. But Cam Ward said it himself right there. I'd rather do all the crazy stuff so in a game I know what I can get away with. That is a big thing that we talked about last week, and that a lot of quarterbacks, great quarterbacks, say the summer is the time to test it. The summer is the time to make throws that you don't know if you can make. The summer is the time to test out things so you know what works and what won't work in a game. Now, all I will say is, off of that, Cam Ward had a little bit of issue with these risque plays in college. So it is something that I'm going to have my eye on more going forward. Like, yes, you could say, hey, you're trying things, doing things, but even when you got into the games in college, you didn't necessarily completely turn that off or figure it out. So are you going to figure it out and how fast at the NFL, is it something that can be turned off enough? That's something that we got to see. But this was, and Brian Callahan said before practice, this was the 3rd time that Cam Ward has got to work on red zone. So, hoping to see some improvements. And he had some struggles. So the next red zone period that they work when they get into training camp, I'm going to be watching it like a hawk because Cam Ward needs to improve and have a better day in the red zone. And look, he had a touchdown pass to David Martin Robinson and a one-handed catch by Julius Chestnut on the sideline for a touchdown in red zone. And Bryce Oliver, who caught 3 touchdowns on the day. Bryce Oliver had an excellent day out there, according to local reporting. But Cam Ward had his moments and he had his good throws, but not enough. You know what I mean? Not enough. So that's something I'm watching for. Again, I know any hint of pessimism at all, and people are going to go crazy and call me a hater, this and that. No, just if you're a logical person who watched Cam Ward's film, who understand who he is as a player, his strengths, his weaknesses, and where he needs to improve. The things that he is struggling with right now in mandatory minicamp are the things that we looked at from college and say, hey, he needs to get better at those. So yeah, he needs to get better. He sounds like he's got a great attitude about it going forward, and now he gets a 5-6 week break to really hone in on these things before training camp. But with that being said, let's talk about everybody making plays on defense. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Look, there's nothing like the NBA playoffs, the intensity, the buzzer beaters, fans losing their minds. It's the kind of atmosphere that you must experience live. And this year's matchups are already delivering. You want in? Gametime makes it fast and easy to get seats, even for the biggest playoff games. Prices on the app actually drop closer to tip-off, and with killer last-minute deals, panoramic seat views, and no surprise fees, Gametime is a total game changer. I was just looking at the Gametime app. You can get zone deals that are offering 60% off on tickets in great sections, and Gametime really does have the best features in the entire industry. And then, NFL tickets are available now as well. So you want to go see a Titans game, no better place to do it than Gametime. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, recapping day 3 of Tennessee Titans mandatory minicamp. Just want to say, guys, I know the show is late. There was a behind-the-scenes technical issue yesterday. Out of my hands, the computers, there's nothing I can do. You guys know I'm no IT guru by any means, so apologize for the tardiness, but I always get you your 5 shows. And again, starting next week, 2 days, Sunday night, I will be dropping my winners and losers from mandatory minicamp. Do winners first, losers the next day. Then we'll look at the Titans plan going forward and the break between training camp. Can't wait to dive into all that with you guys. So again, it may be the offseason for the Titans, but no offseason for Locked On Titans. With that being said, with Cam Ward having his struggles, and quite honestly, all the quarterbacks, other than maybe Will Levis balling out. I'm going to have a Will Levis honesty, positivity segment next week, just to give him his due, because he had a pretty good mandatory minicamp. He did. It's just people don't really want to hear about and don't care, and I'm kind of in that boat too, but he deserves his credit. But other than Will Levis, who had an okay day, the quarterbacks as a whole didn't do a lot in this practice against the defense. The defense won the day again, second time. So the defense wins the matchup, wins the series 2-1. Offense played great day 1, and then the defense responded in a major way. And the same names, once again, showing out. Hopefully the Titans' best players. Cody Barton gets that interception on Cam Ward. Second interception for Cody Barton. And this is why, let me just take a moment. Cody Barton, in my opinion, is going to be the unsung hero of the defense. To the point where eventually he's going to be a sung hero. I don't know if that works, but you know what I'm saying? Jeff Simmons, Tavondre Sweat. We're all excited about Femi. Snead gets a bunch of attention. Is he ever going to play? I don't know. We'll have a L'Jarius Snead honesty conversation coming soon as well. But people know Amani Hooker, of course. Arden Key is a big personality, loud. But Cody Barton is a guy who just kind of, not a lot of fans that bring up Cody Barton. You start talking about the defense. There's other more exciting players. But swapping out Kenneth Murray, and Mike Borgonzi comes in and immediately is like, how do I get this guy off my team? And gets a draft pick. What a dog. Or a better draft pick. What a dog. Okay. But swapping out Kenneth Murray for Cody Barton, a guy with way more coverage versatility. You have to have your primary linebacker have coverage ability. If you're going to have a 3-down linebacker, they have to have coverage ability. And there were moments last year where Kenneth Murray wasn't terrible in pass coverage. There were moments where he was better than what I expected. But there were some other moments where it was a disaster. And Kenneth Murray has never been great in coverage. And the things that the Titans said that they liked about Kenneth Murray, none of them had to do anything with coverage. It was his size, his speed, his ferociousness, his downhill ability, his trigger, his hit power, his tackling. It was never about coverage because he's not good in coverage. Cody Barton is so much better in coverage as a traffic control cop for the Titans defense than Kenneth Murray could ever be. Like, Cody Barton does not have the physicality to be as downhill ferocious as Kenneth Murray. Like, he's just not as yoked up, not as good of an athlete. But Cody Barton is so much better at all the other little things. And coverage is not a little thing. He's much better at a big thing too. You know? And Cody Barton does not miss tackles, my friends. He does not miss tackles. So, I'm just so excited about the heart transplant of the Tennessee Titans defense. They took one out I didn't like, and they put in one that I'm pretty excited about because it's just more versatile. Cody Barton is an elite middle linebacker. He's not. Like, we got to be honest about that. He's not. But with that being said, what his skill set is, to me, is just much more appealing than Kenneth Murray's skill set. Like, nobody's Fred Warner out here or anything. Like, no. But just so much more versatile, in my opinion. And then you can have a Kenneth Murray type be the other guy, which is where we get to James Williams. This is my opinion. I'm not citing sources or reporting or anything like that. This is my opinion. James Williams is winning that other linebacker spot right now. That's my opinion. And we'll talk about that next week when I do winners and losers. But next to Cody Barton, Otis Reese has been banged up throughout the week. Didn't practice on Monday. I don't recall if he got back to practice either of the next 2 days, but started out banged up. We heard from Frank Bush, Titans linebacker coach, that James Williams and Cedric Gray have been rotating with the ones next to Cody Barton. So we've heard that. Also, I recall from day 2, Buck Rising said after Cedric Gray jumped on Cam Ward pitched it to Chim Dike and they fumbled the toss and Cedric Gray jumped on it. Buck Rising said that's the first significant play I recall Cedric Gray making in a team period. To me, I am going to translate that as to, Cedric Gray doesn't really show up much. He hasn't made very many plays. In my opinion, I'm going to take that as he has not been very impressive. I am going to read between the lines on that, and you may think that I'm incorrect on that. But I'm going to read between the lines on that comment because I think the Titans' local media and reporters who go to practice are not allowed to say certain things. Other teams, you could take video of 11 on 11, who the starters are. You could literally film full plays for other teams like the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Vikings. You know, there's a bunch of teams. The Browns, there's most of the NFL is more lenient on what they allow their reporters to film and say than the Titans. I call the Titans the media mafia to a little bit. They're a team that locks it down for what's allowed to be said. Like, Titans reporters aren't allowed to come out and say, hey, here was the starting lineup. Here was the number ones on defense. Here, they could slip in like, Corey Levin got first team reps at center or, I was honestly surprised that came out, if I'm honest with you, hearing that. But now Brian Callahan has talked about that and gave Corey Levin credit and everything. So I think that's an okay thing to know because the coach is offering it up. But the point is, we're not going to be told directly who is like, if it were the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Browns, the Bengals, the Vikings, the Dolphins, the whatever, all the reporters would just be allowed to say, hey, James Williams has gotten the most reps, or Cedric Gray has gotten the most reps with the first team defense at the second inside linebacker spot. We haven't been able to hear that. So I am going to read between the lines and try to figure out what we can. And if someone's saying, hey, Cedric Gray hasn't made a lot of plays, and then we've also seen on the back end of that, the other side, multiple people saying James Williams in coverage. James Williams over the middle. James Williams almost got the interceptions. James Williams got a hand on it. James Williams flew in for a pressure. Like, James Williams can be what you wanted in Kenneth Murray. He has the speed of a former safety. He has the 6'4" frame. But he also has better coverage instincts because he was a safety in college than Kenneth Murray, who has been a linebacker for the majority of time. Like, he played linebacker his final season in college, I believe Kenneth Murray did, if I recall back however long ago that was when he played at Oklahoma. So I just love the setup so much better of having a guy like Cody Barton who has more versatility. And then let's let James Williams be that ferocious downhill guy with a little bit more coverage upside than Kenneth Murray had. And now we're cooking. So love that. Also, quickly, I know, no pads. The offensive line can't really block. These guys are, I saw a video the other day from New York, the Giants can film full team plays. And it was a play where quarterback Russell Wilson drops back, and literally Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Brian Burns, all three of them were literally on him in like 2 seconds. They're like right there. And everybody's like, oh, the Giants pass rush is going to be insane. Well, the linemen can't really block. They don't have pads, you know? And the defensive line, all the defensive linemen typically, especially the edge rushers, are better athletes than offensive linemen. Offensive linemen overpower these guys or use technique to match them. And you can't do all that without pads on the offensive line. So I get that. But once again, Femi Oladipo in the backfield for what would be a sack. Tavondre Sweat also in the backfield for what could have been a sack. The same players, Barton, Femi, Sweat, Williams, popping up every single day here. Every day seeing positive stuff about them from the practice reports. So that gets me excited. We're going to talk more about some of the even more unheralded guys, but I do want to mention Jamari Harris, the undrafted free agent outside long corner out of Iowa, and then Marcus Harris, the Titans 6. Marcus Harris is getting a ton of buzz. That was the draft pick that I liked the least, which means he is destined to be better than expected. But Marcus Harris, the 6th-round pick, the speed cornerback out of Cal, played at Idaho as well. He's getting some good reviews. That's all we'll say there, and we'll dive more into that next week. But finally, I want to talk about Brian Callahan's offseason plan is now complete. Training camp is officially out of the offseason. So what did Brian Callahan have to say about this new plan that he put together? Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, recapping day 3 of Tennessee Titans mandatory minicamp. Again, Cam Ward struggled a little bit, and they are things, if you're honest about his college tape, that we need to pay attention to going forward. Cody Barton is an unsung hero of the defense already, and we need to make it to where he is no longer unsung. But with that being said, do want to have a total holistic view now of the Titans offseason program that they ran now that it's complete with mandatory minicamp being over and us going into the 5-6 week break until we get to training camp at the end of July. Before we dive in, thanks again for making Locked On Titans your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. As training camp gets closer and moves are being made, host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Brian Callahan talked about this all-season plan that he's had and his thoughts on it and, you know, whether it's been good for the team and all that. I just want to kind of break it down for you guys if you don't know, you don't remember, you didn't care, whatever. Brian Callahan did what I've been calling a field day with the team this year. He took the roster and he made teams of like 10 to 11 guys, and there were about 8 teams, okay? And also, I've been comparing it to, like, the House Cup in Harry Potter. Like, basically, when you do good stuff, your team gets points. Cam Ward, touchdown, 10 points for Gryffindor. Sack, Jeffrey Simmons, 10 points, Slytherin. Fumble, David Martin Robinson, 10 points deducted from Hufflepuff. You know what I mean? Like, that's basically what Brian Callahan was doing. Made things weird because, like, Cam Ward throws an interception like he was joking about. That's points away from Cam Ward, but Cody Barton's on his team. So, like, Cody Barton gets points. I don't know. No one's ever reported on the scores, who's winning. We know who the captains were and this and that, but whatever, I guess was somewhat critical that the Titans maybe didn't maximize their competitive opportunities throughout this process, like mandatory like rookie minicamp, for example. And, the social media team was doing the team no favors by only posting the games, like the tug of wars and, different stuff like that. It's like, did we get any real, like, football content at all? And eventually it came around, you know what I mean? But regardless, Brian Callahan talked at length throughout this offseason about developing leadership, developing more of a team culture, like developing more togetherness between the group and having them be together and know each other. So he switched up the locker room, and the linebackers aren't just with the linebackers. Cam Ward's next to a wide receiver, next to an offensive lineman, next to a linebacker, next to a D lineman, next to a cornerback. Like, the locker room's all mishmashed, not sorted by position whatsoever, to create more togetherness within the entire team. The offense, the defense, not just them, cornerback, position groups, the whole team is a team. That's what they've been trying to do to foster leadership and culture this year. So that's why Brian Callahan did it. He totally revamped his offseason plan to try to accomplish the goals that he thought he needed to accomplish for this team. And this is what Brian Callahan had to say about it. Quote, "I'm really happy with how the program went, and I think you can ask the players how they felt about it. I think it kept our competitiveness high. It kept our focus on the things that matter. The intent of what we're trying to get done was sort of on our minds. The intent of what we were trying to get done was sort of on our minds all the time." Callahan talks a little extended for me. Get to the point. Back to the quote. "I hit it every day in the team meetings, from practice things that showed up that we need to cover. I think it made us a better football team at the end of the day, and that's what the goal was. We have a whole lot of work ahead of us, but for the program itself, I thought it was successful." Now, Brian Callahan can say that, but here's the reality, and this is the same point that I tried to make a month ago about the optics of his offseason program. He has put a major emphasis on, hey, I revamped my offseason program to fix this team, to fix the locker room, to fix the culture. Okay? And he did it in an unusual way. And he put a spotlight on the fact that it was unusual, and he changed things, and it's this big thing, and he's talking about it now, and all the reporters know about it and ask about it, and they ask the players about the competition. The attention that has been put on this revamped offseason is major. So with that in mind, if the Titans come out and struggle, if the Titans come out and win 2 games in the first 2 months, if the Titans come out and get to Thanksgiving and they're 3-8, Brian Callahan is going to be asked again, hey, do you think your off-season program worked? And whether it did or not, it's going to be looked at as a failure. You tried something different, you tried something unique, and it blew up in your face, and the team is still bad. Now, I am not going to criticize Brian Callahan for, like, the new offseason program. I think that they should have done more football work with the rookies, but whatever. But the reality is, I'm not going to blame Brian Callahan for trying to do something different with the offseason game and the culture field day that they were playing throughout the offseason. I'm not going to blame him for that. You got to try something. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over, So you got to try something. So I get it, all right? I'm not going to be like, well, I think the Titans, had a bad season because Brian Callahan had them playing team culture games throughout the all-season program. Like, that's not going to be why. But people will. The optics will not be good. And they'll, this fancy all-season program, this revamped program that you had. But I hope that it did work. And I think from a logical standpoint, the idea of mixing the team together. And we're going to talk about this next week when we talk about what's next for the Titans. But joint practices for the Titans, they're going to be on the road for 2 weeks and not come home. So it's truly going to be like a camp where they're all together at the same time. And they're, when you're on the road is when you bond with your teammates, because you're not at home. You're not distracted by, why family, chores at home, personal life, relatives, bills. But look, you're out on the road with the boys, playing football, joint practices. Like, that fosters togetherness as well. And, I hate to ever bring my athletic careers involved in the show because, I just was a high school athlete. It's not like I ever did anything more than that. So, most of us have the experience of, think when you got to go to that track meet at the school 2 hours away, or you play the, a football team an hour away, those bus rides with your buddies. Think if you've ever done a travel baseball trip. If you were ever in a band and you went on a small tour, those times are precious. All right, those travel moments. So hopefully, I understand the logic of what Brian Callahan's done with this all-season program. I understand in theory how it could, accomplish the goals that he wants to accomplish by creating the culture. He says it was successful. He says he thinks that it worked. Ultimately, though, you will be judged by how many games you win. But in theory, I do understand what he's trying to do, and, I hope it works for him. I hope it works. I want Brian Callahan to work. He seems like a good guy. He's honest and transparent. I really do feel like he's doing his absolute best. I hope it turns around for him. So, with that being said, though, again, winners and losers of the total mandatory minicamp, all 3 days coming to start next week. What's next for the Tennessee Titans going forward as we get into a little bit of the break? Again, division rival week will be the week after that. So much content I have planned for you guys this summer. Make sure that you stay locked in, all right, to the Locked On Titans podcast. But with that being said, that is going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Sorry about being a little bit late. And this was Locked On Titans.